Now, the next major contribution after Reimarus was the publication of David Friedrich Strauss's The Life of Jesus, critically examined, and this was in 1835 to 1836, so 19th century. He was German. And what he did was he subjected the Gospels to close examination, proceeding scene by scene. Against the backdrop of attempts at harmonizing and rationalizing, Strauss advanced his mythical interpretation as a third stage of the dialectic. Okay, so a dialectic between those who want to harmonize the Gospels, right, make all four Gospels become one, or those who want to rationalize the Gospels, that's find a way to explain away anything supernatural and miraculous. Okay, so the Gospel is completely acceptable to um, someone who does not want to believe anything that can be demonstrated by science. And what he's saying is that, well, these two have form a dialectic, and then you can come up with a third way of looking at the Gospels, which is this mythical interpretation. In Strauss's judgment, the Gospels resulted from the application of Old Testament themes, especially messianic ideas, to the life of Jesus. Apart from a few basic facts about Jesus' life, the Gospel contains primitive Christian ideas expressed in historical form. Unlike Reimarus, Strauss did not consider the Gospels a product of deceit. The Gospel tradition is historically unreliable not due to fraud but to the inevitable growth of poetic legend around the venerated figure. So this was Strauss's view. So for Strauss, Jesus was simply the vehicle used to express messianic ideas and was no more important than any other human being. So what's going on here is this, is that Strauss is saying his disciples took Jesus as a figure, the ideal figure, and they attached all these messianic ideas to him, right? And so Jesus was simply a vehicle used to express his messianic ideas that were out there that the disciples have attached to Jesus. Okay, but he differed from Reimarus in claiming that Jesus was deceiving anyone, was a pretender, or that the um, disciples were actually engaged in deceit. So Strauss's work sparked an intense debate and led to a proliferation of books on the historical Jesus. Now, the most fundamental objection to his recasting of Christology is that he failed to see the importance of Jesus for the development of the Christological idea. The Gospels are not a mere expression of existing ideas with reference to Jesus, but a critical adaptation of such ideas on the basis of who Jesus was. Okay, so what's going on here is when you think of the name Jesus Christ, so the first part of the name Jesus, you can think of that as historical. That is the name of a man who lived at a certain point in time in Palestine. But when you think of Christ, the word Christ itself is a title, and it means Messiah, and that's a statement of faith. Okay, so that's a Christological idea, applying this name Christ to this man Jesus. And what the objection against Strauss is that he failed to see that Jesus himself was responsible for people seeing him as the Christ, right? He failed to see any link between Jesus and Christ. He failed to see that people believed he was the Christ because they saw him do and say things that fit the idea. Okay. So this was one of the main criticisms against Strauss. But what he did was he urged important questions. He made us think about the relationship between the historical Jesus and the Christ of faith, right? So the historical Jesus, that's the man who lived and walked around in that uh, first century Palestine. And the Christ of faith, that's the people that people believe in, right? And he, like Reimarus, brought that to the fore for us to think about. Is the Christian message of salvation separable from its historical origin in Jesus? Is the idea of salvation that Jesus died for us something that Jesus himself said and originated, or was it a later product of the disciples' reflection? Now, the resultant effort to uncover the historical Jesus soon led to the recognition that Mark was the first gospel and to the identification of something we call Q, which is a common source behind the texts of Matthew and Luke.